This seminar is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Consult with your medical provider for medical advice or treatment. Although the presenters try to keep the information in this seminar as accurate and timely as possible, the speakers and Mather Hospital assume no duty to ensure the seminar is error-free. The speakers and Mather Hospital are not responsible or liable for any claim, loss, or damage resulting from you viewing this seminar.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our HealthyU webinar series. Today's topic is nutrition for cancer prevention. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to answer any questions you may have using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can within the time allotted once the presentation concludes. Your questions will always remain anonymous. And today's presenter is Jessica Casano. Jessica, I'm going to pull up your PowerPoint and then we can get started.
So hi everyone, welcome. So this presentation today is going to be on nutrition and lifestyle for cancer prevention and recovery. I am going to turn off my camera until I take questions at the end, just to help better utilize this space on the screen. Next slide. Okay. So this is just a quick overview. The list you see here are the main topics I'll be focusing on today. This presentation, I will be giving information, statistics on cancer prevention, but the recommendations apply for those intended or interested in both cancer prevention as well as recovery. This presentation is meant to be informative and to help you make changes to live a healthier lifestyle. It's not used to be a scare tactic. Any changes that you do make can have a positive impact. Next slide. All right, so introduction. The most important modifiable determinants of cancer are tobacco use, weight, eating patterns, alcohol consumption, and physical activity. According to research, an estimated 18% of cancer cases and 16% of cancer deaths are attributable to the combined effects of excess body weight, alcohol consumption, physical activity, and an unhealthy diet. Next slide. So first I'm going to be talking about physical activity and how that's important in regards to cancer prevention. So why exercise? Physical activity has been linked to a lower risk of a lot of cancers, including all the ones you see listed on the slide here, with colon cancer in particular having the strongest link. Excess body weight is responsible for 11% of cancers in women and 5% of cancers in men in the US. So achieving a healthy body weight and avoiding weight gain in adulthood has also been shown to reduce the risk of developing cancer. Studies have shown a link between weight loss and lower risks of some types of cancer, specifically breast and endometrial cancer. In cancer recovery, exercise can improve strength and muscle mass that was lost during treatment, and then it can help decrease stress as well. And that doesn't go just for those in recovery, that goes for all of us. So as you can see, exercise isn't only important for optimizing health, but it could also have a significant impact on cancer risk and your recovery. Next slide. Physical activity guidelines. So now that I talked a little bit about why exercise is important in cancer prevention and recovery, what type of exercise should we be incorporating into our daily routine? Adults should engage in 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise, moderate physical activity per week. And for those of us who can't do math like myself, that's about 2.5 to 5 hours of exercise per week, or 75 to 150 minutes, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes to 2.5 hours of vigorous intensity physical activity per week. The upper end of 300 minutes, which is 5 hours of exercise each week, is considered optimal. And in addition to increasing exercise, we should try to limit sedentary behaviors such as lying down, sitting, and using our screens as much as possible. A physically active lifestyle may lower a person's risk for other health issues, including heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and osteoporosis. Next slide. So types of physical activity. The table that you see here gives examples of both moderate and vigorous activity that I mentioned on the previous slide with time recommendations. So you really can find a way to exercise no matter your environment, your fitness level. If you are combining different types of activity, 1 minute of vigorous activity can take the place of 2 minutes of moderate activity. So that's just something interesting to keep in mind. And then if you're first starting out with a physical activity program, you haven't really worked out in the past, you can start below these recommended levels of vigorous or moderate activity, and you could still get benefits for overall health from that. And then slowly increasing intensity and activity over time is, recommended, and you just work up to that. But before starting any physical activity program, it is recommended to consult with your doctor before doing so. Next slide. So just some quick tips on ways to increase activity. You can use the stairs rather than the elevator. That's an easy one. If you can, walk or bike to your destination, especially now that the weather's getting nicer. Walk or exercise on your lunch breaks. I know right now we have the walking, competition going on. Take a walk between tasks at home or work. Join a sports team. Plan trips with more activities such as hiking. Use a treadmill or bicycle when watching TV. Play with your kids outside. You could wear a pedometer to track your steps, which could be a motivator, or you can join a fitness challenge. Next slide. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about strength training. Resistance training in particular has been shown to reduce cancer mortality by 31% and improve overall health in cancer survivors. Weight training specifically aids in lowering hormones such as estrogen and insulin, which are related to cancer development and progression. It helps reduce inflammation and can improve the immune system, which allows the body to properly function and ward off disease. Strength training also increases muscle mass, which is important really for anyone, but also particularly in our aging population where you start to see some muscle loss there. So how do we get started? Always ask your healthcare provider, as I stated on the previous slide, before starting an exercise program. If you are unfamiliar with weight training, most local gyms and studios do offer free trial personal training sessions or classes to get a feel for it, see how you like it. And then there's online coaching as well. There's plenty of apps now. There's YouTube where you could find, stuff within the comfort of your own home if you don't want it to go out in a more social setting. And then lastly, you can make it social. You could try a group fitness class or plan to work out with a friend or a family member. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the role alcohol and tobacco play in cancer prevention. These recommendations would apply to those in cancer recovery as well, unless otherwise specified by your doctor. So alcohol consumption. Just some quick statistics to start off. An estimated 6% of cancer cases can be attributed to alcohol consumption, including all of these that you see listed here on the slide. So cancer risk increases with alcohol volume. Why? There's actually a couple of reasons why we drink alcohol, or after we drink alcohol, I should say. It's metabolized by our body. It degrades into chemicals that can bind to our DNA, which this can have the potential to result in mutations that could impact our cancer risk. Alcohol has also been shown to increase levels of hormones linked to certain types of breast cancer. And then lastly, in regards to tobacco use, I'm really not going to harp on that too much because I feel that it's widely known that tobacco use greatly increases cancer risk. I do want to point out, though, that alcohol consumption combined with tobacco use increases this risk even further than drinking or smoking alone. Next slide. Okay. So some more alcohol recommendations. Now that I probably scared everyone by saying how much alcohol can increase the risk of so many cancers, what do we do about it? According to the American Cancer Society, or the ACS, which is what I'm going to refer to it going forward, the gold standard is to avoid alcohol completely. While alcohol consumption is a big part of our culture in the US, I personally have seen a shift the last few years where it's more popular to avoid alcohol. Companies and even some celebrities have been coming out with alcohol alternatives that not only are alcohol free, but promote some sort of health benefit as well. I listed some examples on the slides if anyone is interested. Betty Buzz, which you could see in the bottom left-hand corner, was founded by Blake Lively. They make a variety of tonic waters that are flavored. You could use them to make spritzers, and they have recipes on their website as well. DeSoy, which is seen in the top right-hand corner, is backed by Katy Perry and sells non-alcoholic wines and aperitifs. Seedlip is a non-alcoholic gin. Three Spirit is advertised as a botanical blend. The list really does go on. There are tons of recipes online for fun mocktails, and a lot of restaurants now I'm seeing too, even when you look at the menus, have mocktails that are fun on there as well. So as I mentioned earlier, some of these products even contain health promoting ingredients. A few of these include antioxidants, probiotics, prebiotics, adaptogens. Adaptogens in particular are interesting because they've been shown to help the body adapt, just as the name implies, to stress and exert a normalizing effect on bodily processes. Some more well-known examples are ginseng, ashwagandha, rhodiola, lion's mane, and reishi. Just check with your doctor before introducing any of these because some of them do interact with medications or certain health conditions. Next slide. So just continuing with these alcohol recommendations, although the American Cancer Society, recommends that we abstain from alcohol, we also need to be a realist. I'm aware most people enjoy a drink here or there. So with that being said, it's something that would be better reserved for special occasions instead of like an everyday thing. So for those of us that do choose to drink, according to the American Cancer Society, drinks should be limited to no more than 1 per day for women and 2 per day for men. If you're curious what a drink looks like, I place some examples on the slide to the right. So no, a glass of wine doesn't mean as much as you can fit into your glass. Some of those glasses are really big. And no, it also doesn't mean that you could save all your alcohol intake up all week to then binge alcohol on the weekends. I do find that alcohol is a type of crutch or a coping mechanism for a lot of people. So how many people or how many of us have said, I need a drink surrounding an event? How many of us have then overindulged and then felt worse afterwards? Substituting alcohol with healthier coping mechanisms such as exercise or other hobbies can be beneficial in improving both physical and mental health. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on red wine a little bit because it's a question I do get a lot. Red wine contains an antioxidant called resveratrol. It's found in the skin of grapes, cranberries, and blueberries. That's what gives it that dark red, that dark blue color. This compound is thought to reduce cancer risk, but its effect has appeared mostly in the lab and not in many human studies. Some researchers say that red wine does not contain enough resveratrol to be effective, while other research has shown that red wine may lower the risk of colon and prostate cancer. It is possible that this lowered risk may be due to other compounds in red wine in addition to the resveratrol. So if you are choosing to drink, darker red wines may be a better option, but just remember it does not outweigh the negatives of excessive alcohol intake. Next slide, please. So diet. On the next few slides, I'm really just going to be talking about diet recommendations for cancer prevention and survivorship. So on this slide, I'm going to be talking about all things that we should be trying to increase our intake of. So when you're told to follow a healthy diet, what does that actually entail? Well, according to the American Cancer Society, You want to increase intake of fiber, which includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, as well as limit intake of red and processed meats, sugar sweetened beverages, highly processed foods, and refined grains, which I'll delve more into that on the next few slides. In regards to fiber, you want to aim for 25 to 35 grams per day. Many fibers act as a prebiotic, which feeds the healthy gut bacteria. It can help with weight management by promoting satiety and bowel regularity. Many high fiber foods contain phytochemicals, which phytochemicals have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, so those make them beneficial in cancer prevention and as well as survivorship. Increased fiber intake is also most closely related to decreased risk of colon cancer. On this slide, I've also have included serving recommendations for fruit, vegetable, and whole grains. So for vegetables, we want to aim for 2.5 to 3 cups of vegetables a day. For fruits, the American Cancer Society recommends 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit a day. And for whole grains, they recommend getting at least half of your grains from whole grains. If you could do even more than that, that's great. And then on the left here, you could see some examples of what whole grains look like. So things like barley, brown rice, buckwheat, are all good options. Okay, next slide. All right. So next I wanted to touch on the foods that we should be trying to decrease our intake of. Red meats such as beef, veal, pork, lamb, goat are classified as probable carcinogens, which means they are probably cancer causing. With these foods, I often get asked if there's a difference between organic, grass fed. Research has shown that what the animal eats affects the nutrient and fat content in the meat. So essentially, you are what you eat. Grass fed beef, in particular, may have a lower total fat content, more heart healthy omega 3 fatty acids, and more antioxidant vitamins such as vitamin E. However, grass-fed and conventional grain-fed beef both contain saturated fat. So if you are opting to eat red meat, I would try to choose leaner options for that contain 10% fat or less. Even more so than red meat, we should try to eliminate our intake of processed meats. Processed meat is defined as being transformed through curing, smoking, salting, fermentation, really any other methods used to improve preservation or enhance flavor. These foods include bacon, sausage, ham, bologna, deli meats. These foods are classified as carcinogenic, so cancer causing, and should be consumed sparingly, if at all. The American Cancer Society recommends substituting these meats with leaner proteins such as fish, poultry, and beans. In addition to processed meats in the next column of this table, we should really be trying to avoid all processed foods. So some of these would include cakes, cookies, candy, sugar-sweetened beverages, and ready-eat heat food. So a lot of those convenience items. These foods are higher ingredients such as fat, added sugar, refined grains, and sodium that are linked with negative health outcomes, some of those including cancer. Up to 60% of calories consumed in the US are from highly processed foods and beverages, which is significant. That's more than half of our, the things that we're eating. So it's something that we really need to work on as a country. Lastly, in the third column, I wanted to talk about added sugars. That's another thing that's recommended to cut out in our diets. And these include things such as high calorie sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup, beverages including soda, juice, sports, and energy drinks, as well as candy and desserts. A diet high in these items is associated with risk of weight gain, which may increase cancer risk over time. And then when looking at added sugar, you should also aim to limit it to less than 10% of your calorie intake. Next slide. Okay. So food additives and dyes. I just wanted to briefly touch on this subject because it plays a lot into current events, and I do get questions on this often. So on January 15th of this year, the FDA announced that red dye number 3 will no longer be allowed to be used in food and ingested drugs. And then even more recently, the FDA and Department of Health and Human Services announced it plans to phase out an additional 8 food dyes. So we'll see how this plays out over the next few years. Red dye number 3 specifically has been proven to cause cancer in animal studies, but there is limited evidence for humans. If you do look, in a lot of other countries, these food dyes aren't allowed. So looking at the research too for some additional dyes, red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, they've also been shown to be contaminated with benzidine or other carcinogens, and all of these ones are also going to be phased out. When it comes to emulsifiers such as these listed on the table or on the slide, it's difficult to determine if they cause cancer, as human studies are mainly observational. In animal studies, they've shown them to cause changes in the gut microbiome, and they can increase inflammation. And specifically, polysorbate 80 and CMC have shown an increased association with colon cancer in animal studies. So really overall, it's better to try to avoid or limit products containing food dyes and additives, even if it's not directly linked to cancer. Foods and environmental factors that increase inflammation can predispose people to chronic disease or exacerbate existing ones. Next slide. So just kind of continuing with food additives a little bit. BHT and BHA, they are synthetic antioxidants and preservatives that are used in our foods, and as well as food packaging and personal care products. Some food sources include things like snack foods, chips, baked goods, processed meats, butter, lard, cooking oils, chewing gum, dehydrated foods, and cosmetics. They're listed as a likely carcinogen, potential endocrine disruptor, so it could impact our hormones, and has been linked to immune system changes. Another additive I wanted to touch on was nitrates and nitrites. These help inhibit the growth of bacteria and extend the shelf life of the processed meats that I discussed earlier, such as those deli meats, bacon, hot dogs, and ham. Exposure can also come from foods and water that are exposed to nitrogen-based fertilizers. They contribute to the characteristic pink color and flavor of processed meats. Nitrates and nitrites are generally considered safe in small amounts, but excessive consumption may pose health risks. This is hard too, because how do we define what excessive consumption is? Some studies have shown an association with increased risk of colon, kidney, and ovarian cancer with foods containing these. So in my personal opinion, I would try to avoid them as much as possible. And just another little tidbit of information. So vegetables such as dark leafy vegetables, celery, beets can also be high in nitrates, but because they contain things such as vitamin C and other antioxidants, they inhibit the harmful effects. Some of these vegetables can actually have cancer-fighting properties, so nothing to be concerned from those. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to move on and talk about dietary supplements. While there is a place for supplements, and the supplement industry is huge these days, so I feel like it is important to talk about. So while there is a place for supplements, vitamins, and minerals, there is limited evidence that dietary supplements can reduce cancer risk according to the American Cancer Society. Supplements can be used for other conditions or gaps in our diets, but they don't make up for an unhealthy diet. So it is important to try and get most of your vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants from whole foods first. It's also important to point out that dietary supplements are not FDA regulated, and what's advertised on the bottle may not necessarily be what is in the product, whether it doesn't have the levels of what's advertised or it has additional things in there that are not necessarily on the label. If you are choosing to take a supplement, I would recommend choosing one that's been third-party tested. It'll often say on the packaging itself if it has been third-party tested, Or, for example, there's a website called LabDoor that does ratings and reviews on supplements for purity and label accuracy. One vitamin in particular I do want to discuss is vitamin D. Vitamin D can help maintain bone health. It helps with immunity as well as cognitive health. It's achieved from UV rays naturally in foods such as fish and mushrooms, as well as fortified foods like milk, orange juice, and cereals. While vitamin D can be found in foods, it's unlikely we can obtain enough vitamin D from diet alone, especially in the winter months. And there has been some association found between vitamin D and lower colorectal cancer risk, but more research is needed on that. The importance of vitamin D doesn't outweigh the need for sunscreen in regards to cancer prevention. So, while we need to have adequate vitamin D levels for all those benefits, you still want to make sure you're wearing your sunscreen. It is recommended that those under 70 years old obtain 600 IU or international units daily, and those over 70 get 800 IU daily, although most people could take up to 4,000 IUs safely. But as with any supplement, really check with your doctor before starting or changing what you're taking. Next slide. Okay. FAQs. The next few slides I put together in the hopes to address common questions I get about nutrition in regards to cancer prevention and recovery. So the first one I'm going to talk about are organic foods more cancer protective? So in two studies from 2018 and 2018, they evaluated and compared organic foods. So organic plant foods were found to contain less pesticides, lower content of nitrates, and an increased content of polyphenols and vitamin C. The animal products they looked at contained more beneficial unsaturated fatty acids. And then the organic dairy products, there was a little bit more variable results with that, and they were higher in protein content and saturated fatty acids. The regular and frequent consumption of organic products has shown to decrease the risk of overweight and obesity, as well as possibly decrease the risk of cancer such as breast cancer, multiple lymphomas, prostate cancer, some skin cancers, as well as colorectal cancer. In regards to organic foods, more research is needed, especially larger studies, according to the American Cancer Society, but these studies have promising results. Additionally, the American Institute for Cancer Research acknowledges there's a connection between organic food and cancer prevention, but they feel that eating mainly plant-based has a higher impact than just eating organic alone. If you try to cut down on exposure to chemicals in food products, you could make sure you're washing your produce thoroughly and buying organic when you can. Another tip is to buy local and buy in season. You could also use tools to help with decision making. There's plenty of apps out there, some that I'm going to talk about on the next few slides, two of which being the Environmental Working Group and Yucca, everyone says it differently, which I will talk about. Next slide. Okay, so this is the Environmental Working Group, also known as the EWG's Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this already, but what this is the first dozen foods on the left are those with the highest level of pesticides, and the Clean 15 are the 12 with the lowest. They are tested yearly, and they really can help when prioritizing which foods to buy organic. I know organic can be expensive, so if you're on a budget and you don't want to buy everything organic, then I would really just focus on those 12 on the Dirty Dozen. Okay, next slide. So the EWG also has an app as well as a website called the Skin Deep Database. I just wanted to discuss this a little bit. It allows you to search products such as cosmetics, cleaning products, and you can access reviews on product safety and their ingredients. So it breaks down each item by ingredient and then gives it a rating. The image in the middle here, you can see it gives you what their data score key looks like. And on the right is a sample of what the review would look like. And then when you are looking at the review, you can expand on the rating and you could see an explanation as to why it meets the certain criteria. Okay. Next slide. Another helpful app you can have in your tool belt is called Yucca. This app scans food and cosmetic product barcodes to assess their health impact by analyzing ingredients and providing ratings and recommendations for healthier alternatives. It provides a score based on nutritional quality, additives, and organic aspects for food, and analyzes ingredients and assigns risk levels for cosmetic products. It offers a color-coded system to indicate the product's impact on health. It provides detailed information on each product, including a breakdown of ingredients and their risk factors. This app can also recommend healthier alternatives for products with negative scores, so it also gives substitutions. And it allows the users to scan and store previously scanned products. I know it's advertised primarily as an app that you could scan barcodes on items, but you could also manually search for foods or products as well. So just on the right here, you can see an example of what this looks like. Everyone that I've showed this to before gets upset when they see that goldfish are listed as bad. But just remember too that none of these tools are the end all be all, but they are helpful when you are trying to choose healthier options. Okay, next slide. Okay. So next question, does soy increase my risk of breast cancer or breast cancer reoccurrence? So soy contains several bioactive compounds, including isoflavones or plant estrogens, which can bind to estrogen receptor cells. The estrogen found in soy is weaker and functions differently than estrogen found in people. So I feel like that's a misinterpretation that people get a lot. Traditionally, soy foods such as edamame, tofu, and unsweetened soy milk are actually a good source of plant-based protein and may even lower the risk of breast and prostate cancer. On the other hand, it is recommended to avoid use of soy-based supplements such as protein powders with soy protein isolate and texture soy protein because they contain more concentrated amounts of these plant estrogens. And then additionally, soy condiments such as soy sauce, which is high in salt, soybean oil, which has been shown to be pro-inflammatory, and soy lecithin, which is an emulsifier, should be limited as well. And not because they're directly associated with increased cancer risk, but just because they're more processed foods and we want to try to limit those in our diet. Next slide. Okay. So does coffee affect cancer risk? I don't know about all of you, but I really do love my coffee. Studies have suggested that drinking coffee likely lowers the risk of several cancers, which made me happy. You can see those cancers listed on the slide. Coffee contains biologically active compounds such as caffeine, flavonoids, lignans, and other polyphenols. These compounds can increase energy expenditure, protect against cellular damage, regulate genes involving DNA repair. They have anti-inflammatory properties and may potentially inhibit the spread of cancer. Coffee also influences the amount of time that food is in the intestines, as well as the liver metabolism of carcinogens. So this may also contribute to a lower risk of some digestive cancers. With all this being said, not all coffee is created equal, so it is important to look into the source of your coffee. Coffee, unfortunately, is a high mold product. It could be contaminated easily with mold, or it's something that pesticides are often used in processing. So you want to look into that as well. And then you also want to think about how you're making your coffee. Are you brewing it in a coffee machine? Are you using K-cups? Are you using a French press, etc.? And then also what you are putting in your coffee. So are you adding cream? Are you adding milk? Are you adding sugar? Those higher fat, higher sugar things that we're trying to cut back on. And then you also want to think about what you're putting your coffee into. Are you using a ceramic mug, a disposable cup with a plastic lid, a metal thermos? So those are all just things you want to think about too when drinking coffee. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So PFAS. This is one thing that I don't know about you guys, but I've been hearing this a lot more and more in the media. So, what are PFAS? They are synthetic chemicals used in products such as cookware, food packaging, stain resistant materials, cosmetics, as well as outdoor gear. They're widely used because they're resistant to water, grease, and heat, so they're really resilient. But because of this, these chemicals are being come to known as forever chemicals because they're being found more and more in our environment in places we don't want them to be. So, as depicted, I know it's a little wordy, but in the image on the right, you can see that these chemicals have been linked to cancer, high cholesterol, birth defects, suppression of vaccines, and other serious health effects. While it's impossible to completely avoid these, some ways that you can cut down on your exposure include using stainless steel or cast iron cookware instead of nonstick, such as Teflon. If nonstick is your only option, you may want to decrease the amount of heat you're being used when you're utilizing that cookware. You can pop your own popcorn instead of using microwave popcorn bags. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but inside the microwave popcorn bags, there's kind of like this plastic nonstick residue inside. So that's what you want to avoid. Use glass storage containers or water bottles instead of plastic, and then decrease intake of fried foods that come in grease resistant packaging, such as French fries, pastries, and hamburgers. Next slide. So, next, I want to talk quickly about BPA. So, we see items often advertised as BPA free, but what does that actually mean? Why does it matter? BPA, or bisphenol A, is a synthetic chemical used in the production of epoxy resins and plastics. It's found in food containers, water bottles, and plastics. BPA exhibits hormone-like properties, which plays a role in promoting carcinogenesis or cancer causing for cancers such as prostate, breast, and ovary. Fetal exposure to BPA could lead to long-lasting effects on the carcinogenesis of certain organs. Another study also reported that BPA exposure during puberty can alter functions in gene expression in mammary stem cells, leading to, early neoplasia, could lead to breast cancer. Lack of research showing the associations of long-term BPA exposure and cancer burdens in humans, which would provide definitive evidence for evaluating the risks of BPA exposure for hormone-related cancer. How to limit BPA exposure: you could substitute fresh, frozen, or dried food for canned, or if you are using canned food, make sure you're rinsing it well. And it's not the food that's in the can itself; it's the packaging inside the can, that plastic that's in there. Also, limit how many packaged foods you eat. Don't cook or heat up food that's in plastic. And then you could also look for BPA free in packaging, which I feel, as time goes on, you see more and more products that are listed as BPA free. Okay, next slide. So, do artificial sweeteners cause cancer? According to the American Cancer Society, it's unclear at this time whether there is any association between artificial sweeteners and cancer risk. While some are FDA approved within moderation, as with some other things that we talked about in this presentation, there is no clear definition of how much moderation actually means. So even though artificial sweeteners may be considered safe in regards to cancer risk, I would still recommend limiting intake of artificial sweeteners, as they can have side effects such as gas, diarrhea, bloating, if you consume a lot of them. These sweeteners are also even sweeter than table sugar, so that could lead to more of a preference or a decreased sensitivity to sweetness. And then additionally, some studies have found that these sweeteners can cause unwanted changes to our gut environments. Next slide. Okay. So, is grilling healthy? This is another question I get a lot. So, while grilling is a staple in a lot of households during the summer months, cooking meat at high temperatures can actually cause chemical reactions that form cancer causing compounds. Examples of high heat cooking methods, in addition to grilling, include smoking and pan frying. This does only apply to meat, so it is safe to cook vegetables and other foods with these methods. And then for meats, it is best to cook low and slow if you can. And then if you are grilling, try to avoid charring meat and stick to leaner and less processed protein choices. Some other ways to decrease risk when grilling can be seen on the graphic on the right here on the slide. And these include pre-cooking meat in the microwave a bit before finishing it on the grill. You can flip the food often to cut down on how much charring there is. And then you can also use, a lower sugar, vinegar-based marinade that can help keep that change from happening within the meat, as well as trimming excess fat. Okay, next slide. So here is just an infographic reviewing some of the key points I just talked about today. Some of these include maintaining a healthy weight, being physically active, increasing fruit, vegetable, and whole grain intake, limiting intake of sugar, red meat, processed foods, alcohol, quitting smoking if you are a smoker or tobacco user, and focusing on whole foods rather than supplements. Next slide. Okay. So thank you so much for attending this presentation. I am going to hop back on camera real quick to take any questions if you have.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And yes, if anybody has any questions, please enter them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll give it a few moments here to see if we have anything.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any questions come up.
Okay.
Your presentation answered everybody's questions.
I was going to say, well, hopefully that means I was informative enough.
Okay, I have one question here. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation? Jessica, is it okay if I send it as a PDF?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. So yes, I could send out this presentation to everybody. And it looks like that's the only question I have so far. So,
Okay.
thank you so much, Jessica, for your presentation. It was very informative. Thank you, everybody, for attending. If you do have any questions that come up later in the day, you can email them off to matherhospital@northwell.edu. And once you exit the webinar, you'll see a brief survey um, to complete, and that'll help us plan future presentations. Um, oh, we have another question that comes in. I think that was the best presentation ever. My phone do you recommend the Yuka app or do you like the Yuka app?
I do like the Yuka app. I use that as well as the EWG Skin Deep database. So if I'm looking more into foods, I use that app. And it's super quick if you're at the grocery store, you're trying to find something, or if you haven't heard about it before, you could scan it, get some quick information right at your fingertips. And then for the EWG, I like it if you're trying to swap out like your skincare, any cosmetic products, or like even household cleaning products. If you're looking for a new laundry detergent, dishwasher detergent, anything along those lines, it's a really great resource to have.
All right. So thank you so much. Oh,
Yep.
now they're coming. If stainless steel pans are scratched, is that a problem?
So if they're just stainless steel and they don't have non-stick, that's okay. In regards to, like chemical exposure, but you also just want to make sure if they are scratched really bad, you can build up bacteria in those over time. So, but at baseline, that's okay if they have some little scratching on them.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to give it a few moments because every time I say something, another question comes in. All right. I think I'm going to call it.
Okay.
So thank you, everybody. Again, if you'd like to view past HealthyU webinars, you can view them at www.matherhospital.org/HealthyU. Thank you again, Jessica, so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Bye, you too.